Hello and welcome to Two Man Meta. I am Mondo Spanner.
And I'm Aunty, and on today's episode of OOP, we are reviewing the Terminator card game. And as you've heard in many of the other videos, we've got we've got a lot to say about this.
I feel like I've calmed down.
So, this is just for something to look at while we're talking, really, and we'll talk more about what these are later on. But to start off with, the booster boxes.
The
starter boxes even. Are the starter boxes worth buying in your opinion?
No. But then, do you think the booster box is worth buying?
So I think the starter boxes are worth buying if you want to learn the game.
Yeah, I suppose if you want to learn the game, they are missing. They're just like they're missing so many cards though that could be useful.
Yeah.
And like so, you only get one shotgun and two pistols for three characters.
In the resistance
deck. But the thing that and that's fine because they can get them out quite easily, and so therefore you kind of like you're building up a level footing with the Terminator. But the problem is the specialist rounds, which then allow you to actually do damage to the Terminator, is so easy to lose them. And so like when we were doing our game that we put on the video, you know, like I lost the man stopper rounds in the first shot and they didn't do anything, and then you're really like it's such a struggle. So therefore in the starter deck in particular, what they needed to do away with for the resistance was they needed to do away with a bunch of the supporting characters, and they just needed to put in like those things that you could use to work on the Terminator.
Yeah, you definitely needed some stronger weapons in there. The starter boxes feel ridiculously unbalanced. Like I get that in the films, like the Terminators are like these unstoppable killing machines, but you need to have some sort of ability to put work in. Like until you damage him with a shotgun, you can't do anything.
You have to have done damage to him before he even mildly slows down. So, for example, I think the first time we played, I was the Skynet character, and all I did was I just did close combat attacks. You were unable to hit me, and I just did close combat attacks and just deleted a character a turn, and then that was the end of the game.
It feels like there's also some pretty useless cards in the decks. Like there's one in the Terminator deck that allows you to rotate there's one in the resistance deck even that allows you to rotate a human. Yeah. So you could essentially stop the Terminator from using a support character they find to search with or to do something with, but I think a lot of the times as the Terminator you're just going to kill the supporting character anyway.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
It doesn't really matter.
The Terminator basically just goes from place to place, picks up a supporting character, deletes them, and then just tries to get Sarah Connor out in Tech Noir and then just delete her.
Yeah. The starter decks are also far too small. Like, you get a booster pack in there.
They're less, aren't they? They're less than the actual...
There's like 38 cards and it's a minimum of 50.
Yeah, less than you're actually supposed to play with.
Which is something to expect in starter decks, but these aren't really labelled as starter decks. They're just decks, so you'd assume. Like, you get a booster pack in there of like 9 or 10 cards, but you're not going to hit what you need.
No, it was a frustration. I think as well, there's so... I mean, if we start talking about the booster box now, we worked out there's 100 rares, right?
There's over 100 rares,
and like you get one rare per pack, and you get 24 packs in a booster box. So, you know, you're buying a minimum of 5 booster boxes to just get any form of dupe on the rare, and it's like on the rares, and even then, there's a good chance that you might not get them all. So yeah, that was a bit of a frustration, really.
So if you've been watching the screen as I'm just quickly flicking through this, you can see there's loads of empty slots in this. We got a booster box, 2 extra boosters from the starters. The starter decks aren't built into this folder even. They're still assembled elsewhere because we're still playing. But there's
some weapons, like
so many blank spots.
You could pimp out your starter decks now with these weapons, but even then we got very few dupes of anything.
So yeah, I think we got 3 play sets out of a booster box plus 2 boosters,
and that means like like a play set of 3 different cards, not like 3 full play sets. In no way, shape or form did that happen.
No.
Which is unusual, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
And like
Even you'd expect the commons to turn up more than that.
Yeah, like we didn't even get play sets of all the commons. Like everything just seemed to be a one-off when we were like, when I laid them out on the table to put them into the folder, because this is another, right, I'm going to get to like properly minor things that bother me. There's no numbers on any of these cards.
There's no rarity value on them.
There's no rarity value.
Proper old school. Do you know, like, what was it? What did I get into Magic? In Revised, and they never had like you never knew what was a rare and what was uncommon. You had to like look it up in like Scry magazine.
But if you watched the booster box opening from last week, then essentially we were checking the book has got a list at the back of the rule book to list the rares.
That was actually
so we could find the.
So there's a positive anyway for this starter box is that in the back of the rule book.
We've also got to talk about the rule books there. The rule books are bad.
No, actually, I don't think the rule book's that bad. Like, what I don't like is that there's an abject lack of support. Like, eventually you can find what you're looking for, because like you're talking about hidden movement and stuff like that, aren't you? So there's one bit in the rule book where it goes hidden movement. Where it says that, it says characters capable of hidden movement can do hidden movement, and then it doesn't explain what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't explain who is capable. Like, is everybody capable? Do you have to find?
And like the infiltrator rule as well is really interesting, because in the police station, if you go in there and you've got no infiltration level as a Terminator, then it does like sort of next strength attack to you. Well. The infiltration rule is just so like bizarre. Like you have like infiltration points, and then when you take damage, so basically, what's the point? Like, you know, that just builds into the Terminator's just going to go down quicker. And I don't know. It just seemed pointless. Like it's like, well, why bother having it? Like you're already doing so much work on the Terminator anyway. Once you can do damage to it.
Yeah, I think the thing there is as well, like. Infiltrate is giving them the ability to, take control of the NPC support characters, essentially.
They couldn't take control of humans or animals, until if they had like -2 to their infiltration or something.
But then, why would you bother? Like, a lot of the time, you just want to kill the support characters for the points.
Yeah, and also as well, like you haven't even, I don't understand like the kind of like the squad or the army building aspect of the game. Like that didn't make sense in any way, shape, or form. Because I suppose with the Terminator, you could maybe hire the street punk and send him in to do them over. But then what's the point? You might as well just run in with the Terminator and like mop up. You know, like you just go for whoever's got the strongest weapon, delete them, don't think twice about it. That's it, done.
Right. So there's lots of blank slots from the booster box as well. Like, I'll pick up on my gripe with the rulebook later on in the episode.
Can I just add as well, you can hire animals. Did we pull an animal?
Yeah, I think we got 1 or 2 dogs in the support characters.
Are they from the future?
I don't think so. No, so we've got guard dogs and perimeter patrol dogs. So we do actually have animals.
From the future at the supply depot.
Oh, yeah.
And that's from the observatory.
So there's one set in the past. But I don't know why you'd even bother. Like, they've got 0 importance, so you can throw them at a Terminator, but like they're not doing much.
Do you know what? Actually, what about this? Maybe like you hire a bunch of secondary characters, and then you throw them at the Terminator, and then that bogs him in one spot. And then if you had like loads of like long range, you could just sit in the adjacent spots and like just shoot in, like throwing in waves of like civilians. That could be quite an interesting way of doing it, actually.
So, starter boxes, I think there's some potential worth there if you're desperate to play this game. Booster boxes, I don't think you should buy them at all.
It's just no.
Like, for what you're getting for the money, like, even if they're dirt cheap, you still need to buy so many of them, and there's so few cards compared to the size of the set. I think if
you were paying more than £1 a booster, then it would be worth it.
The other problem with the booster box is there are future cards and past cards and location cards that you need in the future to actually play the game. So when we cracked open the booster box, we realised pretty quickly that we weren't going to get enough cards to even play the future scenario, let alone, decent future decks. Like, we can't even play the thing. So that was a real frustration. Hopefully,
because it would take you What, it'd be about 600 quid to get 5 booster boxes of this now, wouldn't it?
I can't even remember.
Because weren't they 120s?
Yeah, I think it was like 120, something like that.
So, yeah, that's a lot of money.
But again,
that's a lot of money to spend on a game where you can't even perceive whether it'll be good once you've got everything you want.
And prices will be all over the place because, like, as soon as a game or film comes out that's Terminator, it's going to give a boost in price. You know, you're going to be able to pick some up, you know, relatively cheap, I imagine, if you shop around, but they're quite hard to come by as well.
Yeah.
It integrates with the Alien Predator game as well, but for us to play a game with our friend that came around with his Alien Predator deck, we would have to not only get enough locations out of the booster box to build 2 decks with similar locations in, or at least some that you can share to actually meet up with each other, but we'd then have to give a 3rd set. So we'd need 3 future decks essentially to be able to play a 3-player.
Oh, I don't know, but also as well, like then you've got to buy like the future cards, or you've got to get hold of the future cards for the Alien v Predator, and that's even more expensive than Terminator. Well, so you would just be in a state.
You'd have to use locations from this game.
Yeah, well,
because otherwise you couldn't interact. Them.
No, but I think you could have. I bet you there's some crossover lands. Basically, in the rulebook, it says that this can be played with Alien v Predator. No, Alien. Yeah, it is Alien v Predator.
It's Alien Predator.
Oh, Alien.
I don't know why, it just is.
But
so this is like essentially a
that
3rd
could be quite
set
interesting. These would be like Bobbin's Colonial Marines, basically, wouldn't they? But yeah, I think you could build some interesting decks at the minute, but
I think it takes
just
so much
effort.
Bother. Unless you play on Tabletop Simulator, it's exactly that. It's a why bother. So the skin of the game, now that we've had our gripes with the booster boxes and starter boxes, of course I'm going to like the skin of the game. We grew up watching Terminator, so...
It's got pictures from Terminator in it.
Yeah, some of the art.
Check this out.
So
this Terminator
you've got to get it out.
Oh, Devil Eyes. What's he doing? Oh, yeah, you could get him out.
So...
Get it under there.
It's a screenshot with MS Paint red eyes put on there, if you ask me.
It's pure bad.
Don't get me wrong, some of the layouts are okay. Yeah, the one above.
This woman, check her out. Look at her eyes, man. See, that's what happened back in the day when they filmed Terminator if you used a flash. That's how they've got that effect. It's the back of a retinator.
And there's some of the character cards, like the graphics, because they're cards that aren't from the films, that aren't screenshots. They're pretty janky.
They're
like, I don't expect any better, but, you know, it is what it is. It's not
I mean, this is from back in the day, innit? Do you know what I mean? You've got to think of it like that. So this is, what, 2000?
Yeah, and the screenshots are from the 80s.
Yeah, so, but, you know, these ones are pretty rubbish to see. Got Sarah J. Connor there from the end. Now, that's interesting as well, because there's 2 support characters called Sarah J. Connor. So could you run them at the same time?
No.
And because you can't have them out on the set. They're unique, aren't they?
Yeah.
So you can't have them out on the thingy. She's not unique though.
Yeah, singular.
Oh.
They used a different word.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, sorry.
Here's a prime example as well with some of these cards. Like, that's not a bad card. Like, the art style.
It's Daybreak.
Yeah. One of the condition cards.
Oh, nice.
But again, like,
there's a whole bunch of them.
Some of them are really janky. I expect this with screenshots, you know, what can you do? But it'd been nice if, like, they had some kind of cohesive art style in some of them. Like, I don't expect much because it's from a, you know, company that are lesser known, all that sort of stuff. So that's my gripes with the arts. The layouts are okay, you know.
Just need a number for the card in the set.
Yeah, that'd be nice, and a rarity symbol. A set symbol would be nice as well, but it only got 1 set, so what can you do? Like, the events are pretty standard, you know, it's like a Magic layout, essentially.
But that's one of the things, is it doesn't say, there are conditions where it says where you can't use it, like directly before or after a combat roll. But apart from that, it doesn't ever say when you can use those cards.
Yeah.
So that is
so timing is a real issue in this game.
You're just like, what? And so it basically always, we're going to roll into mechanics now, aren't we? So it basically talks about how, what were we on about there?
So the timing of the event cards. Like some of them, like
That's it.
and like you can only affect. So where there's ones like +2 to hit, it says you can only improve stats once, or you can only have one stat improvement on each stat. So you could essentially boost the guy's speed, but then if someone uses an event to cancel it, can I boost his speed again?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many issues in this. Like, I don't expect to ever find an FAQ because it's such an old game and such a less known game. Combat pool, this is another
Combat pool, right? So these are effectively command points for this game. And so for this game here, yeah, that's right, Kurt, they are. And so for this game here, or for this card here, sorry, this would mean that you'd have to spend 2 of your combat points to play this card, right? Okay, that sounds great. All right, well, for kickoff, there's only, like, the number of combat points you get is dependent on the scenario you're playing. There's 2 scenarios, right? One scenario is
The past.
the past, the Terminator scenario, which is what you do from the starter box. And the other one's a future one where you can't play a future one. So that's not happening.
Because you don't have enough cards out of a booster box.
That's it. And in the Terminator scenario, you only get 3 combat points. So what happens is
one player plays something cool and then another player uses an ability to cancel them. So they are completely pointless a lot of the time. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of these ones where you can spend points. Like,
if you could manipulate them, if there was a reason why you might get more of them, then, or like, you know, or be able to mess with your opponent's ones. That's right, Kat, that's right. Then that would be all right. But yeah, just the fact that you're limited to 3 is, it's such a tease.
Right. Cover charge here is an example of some sort of manipulation in it. So target a character entering an interior location. That character's owner must give 1 combat point to every other player, or none of his characters may enter this location.
Okay.
But that just stops you entering for 1 turn. It's not permanent. Like, okay, that could be mildly bogging down, but again, it's such a little manipulation. There needs to be some way to gain, like, maybe there are in cards we don't have. But again, that's just because the sets are too big to get them.
Yeah. So as you, I suppose it's the downfall, isn't it, of like the fact that we've effectively bought like starter decks and we've not got heavily into the product. But the thing is that the initial entry point is so off-putting that it's like, why would I want to get into it further? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, back in the day, if you bought a booster box of this, right, one, well done to you, because I wasn't buying booster boxes back at that time, but also, like, you got such a disappointing set because there's so many play sets that you aren't going to get. You know, you're getting so few cards essentially that you can use. I don't know how anyone ever played this. Like, no wonder it only got 1 set. It killed itself.
Yeah, pretty much. And the best bit as well is it says, for extended rules and support and all the rest of it, go to www.eternity.com, and you go to www, and obviously it's 20 years later, so someone's probably like bought the address or whatever, but it is depressing that it's like, there's nothing.
And just that you can't find FAQs anywhere anyway, because, like, who's playing this game? It must have killed itself so badly. Like,
It'd be awesome if somebody had written a bunch of scenarios that didn't suck.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or like, you know, someone actually had access to all the cards.
Don't get me wrong, once we've got Tabletop Simulator set up, we'll probably give some future scenarios a go, and hopefully it'll do it justice, because some of the mechanics in this are excellent. Like, I've complained about the hidden movement, as Mondo mentioned.
If we got that working, though, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting if you could, like, just define who can use it.
I mean, hidden movement with the Terminator could be interesting because you've only got 1 character when you're the Terminator player, and so therefore, yeah, that would be pretty cool.
That's why the future scenarios would be so good as well, because you can start production points play into more and more Terminators, so it'd be really cool.
Yeah,
but then you've got to decide how many essentially resistance characters the opponent's going to start with. I think someone who likes role-playing in card games and just making it their own could have some real fun building scenarios for this.
Yeah, like if you.
But only if you're playing it on Tabletop Simulator.
If you was like a dungeon master. If that was like your thing and you like making them, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
You know, like but that's what it's kind of screaming out for. If anybody knows of a place where they like maybe put scenarios in a magazine just randomly, and then that's on the interwebs, then please link us a thing, and then we'll give that a go. Because one of my main gripes about the whole of the Terminator game is that the potential is there. I want it to be good.
Yeah, and the future scenario gives you so many win conditions. You can kill all the Terminators or Resistance players. Like as soon as
you can send 3 people back in time.
You can send three people back in time by finding a location, like a time displacement laboratory or whatever, where you can send people back in time.
And you could stack that into your deck. That'd be quite sweet.
Destroy production sites for the Terminators or fire points for the Resistance.
Yeah, you can do the command bunker and stuff like that, can't you? And it's their strongholds.
So other mechanics in this that I like how there's a lot of searching in this game. So once you tap someone at their starting location in the starter decks to search for an item, that item will generally search for another item to attach to it.
Yeah, that was quite good. I think because it's interesting, the draw deck isn't really like a draw deck. It felt a bit more like, in Transformers where you'd use the draw deck as your attack and your defense. It felt a bit more like that because you were going through it so much and so regularly that, I suppose, and then that's another thing that kind of like almost goes into like that role-playing idea is that like that deck is hidden, but you're not really like drawing it at random, are you? And you can discard and mill through it quite quickly, so you can get to where you want, what you want to get, and get rid of stuff that you don't necessarily need.
So a prime example of that is when the City Park comes out, you get to search for a street punk who then gets to search for a knife, and that's
switchblade.
A switchblade, yeah, and that's really in the theme of Terminator, where it all happens. So I really like that aspect, and there's so many good things to say about the mechanics, but the rule book is so badly written. Like it says a to hit roll at one point, and you're like, okay, what do I need? What's my to hit roll? And we spent a while working that out to begin with, because
it was like, we need to roll a die.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was just how do I generate the to hit roll? And
I mean, it does tell you as well, but then
I'm used to like it being called like a weapon skill roll or a ballistics, and then the to hit is what you actually need. But no, this is just called the to hit is what
it's everything.
Is everything essentially. So there's just so many bad things in the rule book. Like a lot of the characters have these keywords on them. So let's have a look here. So he is human and resistance. The colour of the border makes that nice and simple to denote that he's resistance, and he's human, but brave, demolitions, and veteran literally mean nothing.
Veteran I've seen that on cards. Brave as well, but the interesting thing is a lot of the time the card says if this person is brave or veteran. Well, it's like, a lot of the time they come together as in a wanna.
Yeah.
There's very few characters that have one or the other. And the keywords are a bit of
the keywords aren't really keywords. It calls them resources, and so if you play a veteran, you might have an event that says veterans get +1 to hit, or marksman is one that we know of.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just so weird the way it works like that.
It's kind of disjointed.
And like keywords aren't always that obvious. So one of the Terminators, they'll have like here we've got armor 1. Cool. So that adds to your resistance, which is added to by working out your power. So why can't it just say,
+1 power? I suppose.
Or +1 resistance, or +1 armor.
Need to say, the armor. It's like armor links to resistance. There's no need, is it? It could have just said +1.
It's the same thing.
It's
the same thing. It works out as. I don't like it. I want this to be such a good game because it's got such potential. There's things I really hate about the game, like when you have your locations laid out, the board can move to one side or the other depending on how you.
I like the fact that the locations, in actual fact, it's the location mechanics that kind of make the game at some level, because I like the fact that if there's the same card but in different places, then they count as the same place, so then you're connected to more places. aspect of the game I actually quite enjoy.
But there's also scenarios and cards for the locations. Like, I don't know if I can find any here. There's definitely some in the starter decks, I think, where they don't count as the same location, even if they've got the same name, the distinct locations. Where are the locations in this? They might be right at the back. Okay, there we go. So if we can find, so if you have a barren wasteland, it is distinct. So if I have a barren wasteland out and you have a barren wasteland out,
they're not the same.
They're not the same. So I think it could be quite easily possible to build a deck, unless there's any restrictions in the locations deck, where you could never see each other.
You could have a distinct locations deck, couldn't you?
So you could essentially build a game, I think, with this, where you don't actually interact.
That is in the future, though. So
yeah, this is another thing as well, with the amount of future and past. Like, you're going to get a lot of cards that you can't run when you're limited to just playing in the past.
Yeah.
Like, there are ways to get around that.
There's the weaponry, isn't there? There's like the absolutely insane weaponry, which is like pulse rifles or something. Even I know that's from Aliens, before everybody moans at me. But I'm sure they're called something like that, aren't they?
Okay, so it's a plasma rifle somewhere, isn't it? Like a phased plasma rifle or something. So there's the ammunition for it. So, yeah, these are going to be only in the future. And you're going to have to spend production points on it as a Terminator. So you can bring it back into the past.
But they also do cool things, like these do environmental plasma damage, which is just environmental damage, which is just another thing. So they could have just said, look, there we go, it's that. It's almost like they've built in complexity where it's unnecessary.
Yeah, it feels like one of those games where someone knew what they wanted to do, but they weren't working with a team. Or when they brought in a team, everyone knew how to play it so well that they didn't consider writing it for idiots like us who aren't just going to assume it works that way. And like, looking around online, it's hard to find stuff for this game again. So it doesn't make things that obvious. Like, I love that you can take these upgrades. Like, this is another thing with the mechanics. The Terminators can start 2 turns early, 1 turn early, the same time as the Resistance, a turn after or 2 turns after, depending on how many of the resource or production points even
that you spend for your initial
that you spend. So in the starter scenario with the starter decks, the Terminator starts essentially 2 turns earlier because they haven't spent enough.
Yeah.
I think it would have been much better if you'd started at the same time to get a hold of the game mechanics together.
Had like some widdly Terminator rat or something.
Yeah, but I do love the fact that that's built into this game, that, yeah, you can change, like, I'm a big fan of turn 0 stuff, and this is one of those turn 0 things where you can essentially dictate how much searching you can do before the Resistance players show up based on how many production points you spend. Or you can go absolutely whap happy, spend all 20 production points on one Terminator and show up 2 turns after the Resistance and just punch everyone to death with like all kinds of regenerative upgrades and like these horrible retractable claws that are absolutely vile because they boost the Terminator's damage by 2. And they add +1 to hit.
The +1 to hit's the only thing that's worth it there. The
+2
damage is
though,
like meh.
Even if they've had 2 turns getting body armor and all kinds of stuff, like that's the other thing.
I suppose.
Like
no, because that's bulletproof vests and body armor are only from ranged attacks.
But also that's another thing. Like the Resistance are so squishy. Like you're gonna ice them with most hits. Like we've had a couple of times where we haven't quite iced them. But a lot of the time, you're just going to kill them straight out. And like,
there's only one
cool.
dude, wasn't there? There's only one dude who survived in all of the combats. You either miss or they die. If you're the Terminator, you either miss or your opponent dies or whoever you're going after dies. But yeah, we've only had one dude survive, and then I managed to keep him alive by just tapping him out.
Some of the other stuff in this game with the characters doesn't make sense. So you've got a speed on them, which is how high you have. Well, you have to roll higher than that to hit them in combat. But you can also, when you take damage, it reduces all your stats. And when you've got damage equal to your power, you die. We've covered all that in the how-to videos, essentially. But one of the weird things about that is, so this guy's got power 4 and speed 2. So once he's taken 2 damage, he isn't dead, but he no longer generates any move points. So he's just sat where he is. You can bog people down, and it feels really weak. And if you get a couple of damage on the Terminator and you get outnumbered, you just can't move.
Yeah, and then you just pour on pain.
So it feels like that's a really weird one. Like,
that kind of feels right though. My problem is that if he's power 4, he's dead. Because if you go into him with a switchblade, he's dead. If you go into him with the 45 long slide or whatever it's called, he's dead. Like, it's just silliness, really. They just get deleted. And, you know, so, I mean, the resistance get to attack first each time, which is good.
But the damage is worked out simultaneously, so it's not really that much of an advantage.
No, that's true.
Like, it would have been much better if their damage was worked out first. So you put all of the resistance damage out simultaneously, then you put all of the Skynet damage out afterwards, which would just be one roll of damage, essentially, because you've only got one Terminator in these sets. And that would have worked much better because it would have given the resistance an advantage to try and slow the Terminator down.
And with the weapons in the starter deck, you can't, you know, even if you've got man-stopper, dum-dums, hollow point rounds on a Magnum, you're only doing 1 damage to the Terminator or something. So as soon as they've played an action card, which they up their resistance, you're not doing damage.
Yeah.
The shotgun is you have to be in the same location to do a strength 8 hit, and then you put man-stopper rounds on it, which is 10. So that means that would do 3 damage to the Terminator, but 1, you're generally not hitting, and 2, you just up his resistance, and then you know you're only doing like at maximum 1 damage really. So
yeah, there's just so many faults with this game. Like, I want to like it because there's so many good mechanics in it, but there's also ones that are just terrible, like this.
I think the over information is probably my number one problem with it. There's too many cards, and then it's just too difficult to buy. I mean, like, I don't remember how much booster boxes were in 2000, but I'm sure magic boxes were like 80-90 quid still. When it feels like they've never changed price to me. So I'm sure I remember my mate buying a box of revised and it was 90 quid. I could be wrong, kids, but that's my memory. So this must have been around that price point, and for that, like, that's a lot of money back then for what is essentially an incomplete game and an almost unplayable game whilst it's incomplete.
Like, if there were just more of a product line as well, if I could just buy future decks to play, I'd be all over it. I'd buy them straight away, and I'd be like, look, we can do this. But as it goes, we can't even review the future scenario because it's just unplayable. Like, unless we dump loads of money into it or play it on Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah. Right, that's been one long moan right there.
So that's, I think, the mechanics out of the way. Like, there's stuff we like upgrades, production points, turns, and how they do. Like, there's bad stuff like...
So let's think about
the
this.
Stats
Is
on the
this
characters.
competitive?
No. One, because you've got to spend a ridiculous amount of money on it, even at the time, to get the stuff you need.
Yeah.
2, it's very one-sided in the past scenario.
Yeah.
But my real gripe with the competitive play would be it's asymmetric. So if you had a tournament, you'd have to bring a Skynet deck and a Resistance deck, and then play one game as the Resistance player, then swap over and play one as the Skynet player, and then you've got a third game, if you don't go 2-0, to decide who does which deck, and I hate that. Like, I like asymmetric games, like, unless you're gonna...
Well, they're good as being games, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're just not competitive,
No.
I don't think. So yeah, so all right, so it's not competitive. We can get over that. Like, we don't need to go into it more, do we? Because we're just going to repeat our gripes. Right, so learning it was a bitch.
Learning it was really, really hard. Just because there's so much context missing in the rule book as well.
I think, like, actually, one of the things I would say about learning is that the sheets you get in the starter kits were actually pretty good. That's what we used as our main resource whilst we were playing.
The quick start rules.
They are actually legitimately good.
Yeah, and they're a nice little reference.
The rule book is awesome if you've got a Sunday and Monday to fill up with reading.
But then there's so much missing from it still.
Yeah, some of the keywords, and also as well, you have to work out, don't you, that one word is related to another, means this, means that, yada yada. So the learning aspect of the game is nil point.
The other thing we always talk about with learning these games is, could we play it with kids essentially and sit down and have a game with your kids? I don't think this is possible.
No, not at all. Not even this kid at the front wants to play a game.
And then the last thing we talk about is it fun? I don't think it's that fun. Like, it wants to be, but it's just not fun enough, because as the resistance player, it's like throwing yourself at a brick wall.
Yes, it's really difficult. As the resistance player, I think we've had like 2 resistance victories and the rest have been Terminator victories. And until it wasn't until like the 3rd or 4th day of playing where we'd had a resistance victory, basically. Like, the resistance were not, it is really difficult to do.
Actually, there's one more thing I want to talk about with the rules as well. The deck building aspect is really confusing. Like, can I play locations in my main deck, essentially, rather than just the location deck? Because it says at the beginning of your turn, if you don't have any locations in your hand, play the top one off your location deck. So can I just stuff my deck full of locations and go rampant on searching for the police station, which is the main way to win as the resistance player? Like, it doesn't say that. Can I run main characters in my deck? I don't think so, because there's no way to find them.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Just gonna sit here going, yeah.
But yeah, just there's stuff that doesn't make sense, because these locations...
We've looked for those things, haven't we? And they're not in the main rule book, they're not on the quick sheet.
And also, the way it says how many cards are in a playset is very confusing as well. And some of the ways you can interpret what it's reading as you could just fill your deck with 1 card, as long as it's not unique or limited.
I thought it was 3.
Yeah, if it's not unique or limited or something. I think what it means is you can have 3 of a card unless it's unique or limited, and then you can only have 1. So, like, you couldn't have, say, 3 Sarah Connors in your deck or something because she's singular. I assume that that's what they mean. I know that singular means that you can only have 1 out in play at a time, but there's just so many weird things with the wording in the book, and it's very of its time in the way that it can be interpreted multiple ways, and it's not very clear.
Yeah, fair. Right, are we wrapping it up?
Yeah, I think that's all we can say about this.
We apologise if it sounds like one long ass moan, but yeah, it was difficult to learn, and the payoff for winning was not that great.
Yeah, I'm going to say,
even if you won as the resistance,
if you're like very into your custom scenarios and stuff,
and you want to build one,
maybe it's worth a go on Tabletop Simulator. It's not worth buying at all.
No, I wouldn't recommend you go out and invest heavily.
This is the worst game we've reviewed so far. I know we're only on the 3rd game.
2nd.
No, we've done X-Men.
Oh yeah, damn.
Age of Champions, Sigmar Returns, lots of words, trading card game, collectible.
Oh, that was the first one, wasn't it?
So, yeah.
Boo
I'm really disappointed in this. Especially because I remember playing Alien Predator in the late 90s, early 2000s, whenever it was. But we were kids then, and we probably got a lot of rules wrong. So it didn't feel as bad.
Get to the chopper.
And we didn't spend money on boosters, so it didn't feel even worse. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up.
Cool, man.
This is a bad game.
Yeah, it's just been a bit of a disappointment, definitely. It's a shame. It is a shame. Never want to see a game be bobbins. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. If you've played this game and you thought it was like hot shit, then tell us and down in the comments, because we'll be really interested in your experiences. And if anybody knows if there was ever a website or anything that was printed in a magazine like scenarios so that we could, you know, like build decks towards a scenario, I'd be interested in doing that. So I think there's like still some form of future in it. But yeah, we ain't gonna be purchasing it. Right, see you again.
If you enjoyed this episode of Two Man Meta, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date as we release multiple episodes each week. If you would like to help support the channel, check out the links in the description below, as well as links to our social media pages. Thank you for watching. See you next episode.